Welcome. Thanks for coming to the session. I am Grant Hoffman. I lead ConnectureDRX. If you're here in this session, you most likely know who we are already, so I'll dispense with some of those details. We're going to have a two-part session today. You're going to get a little bit of information from me up front, a little bit of information that we've seen about market trends, things that are going on in the industry. And then for the second half, the majority of the session today, we're going to have a panel discussion, and I'll invite our illustrious panel up in just a few minutes. So I'm standing between you and lunch, so we'll try to make this informative and worth your while for coming today. Okay. So, a little bit of background. Today, our session is about driving smart growth. The real focus for the session today is talking about the problem that we're all struggling with in the industry, which is the incredible stress that's on the agents that are in front of us, particularly around AEP. And there are a number of things that have been driving this in the market, most of which many of you already know. There's some debate about whether it's 1.5 or 2 million or so seniors that lost access to their current plans as a result of disruption in the last cycle. There have been health plans that have left the market. The average age of an agent now has crested 40 years old for the first time. High producers are carrying a larger book than they ever have. Health plans are under an enormous amount of stress. The sessions have been replete with information and data about this throughout the last couple of days, and I know many of you live it. What you might be a little less aware of is some of the information that we see in our data sets that add a little bit more color to that and sort of express the intensity of the problem along the way. ConnectureDRX processes multiple millions of enrollments for Medicare Advantage every cycle. This past year, our enrollment volume during AEP doubled, and the number of seniors enrolling in Medicare did not double. So that's your first indication of the amount of stress on the system that occurred in this past year. A lot of our customers spent an enormous amount of time reselling their book during the year. Despite the best efforts to collect information before AEP, despite the best efforts to put automation in terms of agentic AI and other capabilities in front of and behind the enrollment experience, whether that's with a field agent or a call center, we still saw this tremendous crescendo during the annual enrollment period in terms of enrollments. In fact, in our data alone, we processed 500,000 enrollments in the last 3 days of AEP alone. So despite our best efforts to spread out this workload, we still have a ways to go. So Connecture, in partnership with some of our customers, has spent some time trying to think about how we can help individuals that are struggling with that kind of navigate that. So a few things that were sort of realizations that came out to it from our standpoint was that we've reached a breaking point in the industry. We've reached a breaking point where we simply can't throw more resources, more bodies at the problem. It's just not financially sustainable. We believe that disruption is going to continue. Many of you experience that day to day. But one thing we do have is an awful lot of information, a lot of data, 20 years of data, in fact, with information about agent behavior, dealing with this crescendo as we move through it. So knowing that customers are relying on the data, we've spent a lot of time this past year working with some of our partners to train some new digital assistants to try to attack this problem. Everybody knows that whether it's an agent or whether it's support staff, they're only as good as the training as they get. We've been trying to provide some digital capabilities to attack that key problem that we have. The goal here is really very simple. How do we let agents operate at the very top of their license, doing only the things that agents can do, and try to take some of the burden of this crescendo problem away from them as they fight through AEP. So that's probably many of you, the place that you're in. Today is all about a case study talking about an experience with one of our partners, how they've combated that, how we've used data, and how that's helped transform their business. So I'm going to invite them to come up, and as they do, I will introduce them, make room for them on the stage. You guys can come on up. We have Susan Plumer, she's the Chief Growth Officer for Connecture. We have Chris Hagerstrom, who's the Director of Marketing Strategy for Jack Schroeder and Associates. And finally, we have Aaron Davis, who's the Senior Product Manager. And we'll let Susan start the process. And I'll leave the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, and thank you again for having us. Before we start the panel, I thought I would share some statistics with you. We talked a lot about agent fatigue. That's kind of been a keyword that we've been hearing throughout the conference. So I want to share some statistics that kind of show you why agent fatigue occurred and why the need for actionable data to put in the hands of agents at the right time is incredibly important. It was last year and it will remain this year with all the continuous disruptions. So I'm going to try to do this. Did I not do that right?
One more.
Okay, one more.
Maybe one more.
Okay, one more.
Just one more.
Just one more. Okay, we're going to get to it. Okay. So first, and this worked better when I was practicing at home because obviously we're not going to have an interactive discussion, so I can't say, what do you think 92% is? But 92% is the percentage of consumers who received ANOC letters last AEP with a notice of a plan change or a prescription change, a drug change, a formulary change, and this was the number of beneficiaries that had to be dealt with and put into new plans, which equaled 1.4 million consumers that needed to switch last AEP. So the next statistic I think is so staggering. 3.8 million is the number of beneficiaries that agents enrolled and re-enrolled last AEP. So imagine that's like these agents were like running in quicksand. They're trying to manage their book of business while growing it, but meanwhile they're just enrolling and re-enrolling these beneficiaries. And then lastly, 29 million is the number of MA enrollments last year, which was only a 3% increase over the previous years, which is usually in double digits. So think of the work that these agents were doing day after day, and there was only 3% new growth in MA. So this is my setup for our active analytics platform that Connecture is rolling out and in partnership with JSA, and we're very excited to help solve some of these problems for agents and talk about some of the new things that we have in this platform. So I'm just gonna turn this back, maybe backwards here. And I'm gonna start by asking Aaron to talk about, I mean, obviously this is a new platform for ConnectureDRX. Can you talk a little bit about the origin and how it came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the hardest part of any product person, any technology person's job is to predict the future. The stats we saw really materialize in October. But the reason that Chris and I are on stage right now talking about this platform, I want to tell you a quick story around some of that predicting of the future we did almost exactly a year ago. So wind the clocks back to March of last year. Connecture has a conference every year, and this past year it was in New Orleans at the Hotel Monteleone, this gorgeous place. And there was a panel session right smack dab in the middle of the day where a question was asked of Chris and another panelist, what do you want to see from Connecture? Very basic question. One person gave kind of a boilerplate answer, a good answer, but a boilerplate one. Oh, we want more partnership, more integration opportunities. And then Chris says, verbatim, Connecture has the largest communications opportunity in Medicare and is currently doing nothing about it. And there was a polite chuckle in the room, right? And he doubled down.
Nervous chuckle.
Yes. Yeah. and he doubled down. He said, I don't know why everyone is laughing right now. Connecture has the largest communications opportunity in Medicare and is currently doing nothing about it. Now, as a product guy, I can't hear that and not want to dig in further. Fast forward a day, Chris and I are sitting in a small coffee shop across from the hotel, and we leave that conference with back of the napkin sketches for a platform that gives agents more transparency on their book of business that they've ever had had before, but transparency in how those members are going to be disrupted by a very disruptive AEP season. But go one step further to not just say, here are the areas and here's the data, but what do you do with it? How do you actually actualize it? How do you put communications, content in front of those folks to say, hey, you're going to have an impact next year, but I got you. I'm your agent. I'm the one that you trust. I'm the one that you know. And we left that conference with those sketches, and then we went to work. A few weeks later, we had a prototype, and we started to really realize, this became kind of a fun side project. It was, hey, let's dig into this a little further. But then May hit, and we started hearing from every expert that we had in our wheelhouse that AEP 2025 was going to be a nightmare. And I can't quite see any head nods, but whether internally or externally, I feel like we all felt that way, right? We were staring down the barrel of a final rule. We were staring down the barrel of administration changes, but we were staring down the barrel of a lot of decisions that were being made in rooms, negotiations about plans, about discontinuations, about entries and exits in markets, about formulary changes, premium changes, benefit changes, and all of that was going to rest on the shoulders of the member. And as a technology company, we said, look, we are the stewards of data on 30 million Medicare members, and we have databases that power our software that we've been curating for the better part of 25 years. Let's coalesce those together into a data model and pump out audiences of who is going to be affected within a book of business down to the member level. And we really realized this. We said, look, this isn't a fun side project anymore. This is something that needs to be in market now. And 60 days later, we developed a pilot, and we were so fortunate and so lucky that JSA said, yeah, give it to us. Let's do it. Let's actually see if we can identify member by member who is going to be affected by a plan discontinuation, by a premium cost increase, and by a drug formulary change, an expensive drug that was covered last year and is not going to be covered this year. How frustrating would that be to go to the pharmacy and discover that for the first time when you're getting a pill bottle? What we were able to do as part of this pilot is we analyzed 100,000 members across a couple of partners. JSA was the largest chunk of that. And we gave them that insight on exactly which members were going to be impacted. And we found it was about 1 in 5. We're going to have a massive level of impact for next year. We put that in their hands in forms of a UI and let them run with it. And then really the magic started to happen. But it validated that we were right, that massive disruption was coming to the Medicare market, and quite frankly, we had the responsibility to do something about it. Fast forward to now, that's what we're out here really actualizing, formalizing, making sure that it is not just a pilot anymore, that it's something that is broadly and widely available for the entire market.
So before we move on past the pilot, I want to talk to Chris, and being the first pilot, why was this so important for your agents and their book of business, and what impacts did you see?
It was, now that I sit here, hindsight, it was probably the most important decisions that we've made in a couple AEPs. The change that was happening from 2024 to 2025 was going to have the biggest impact on the Medicare space ever since 2008. Anybody remember MIPA being passed way back when? That was a big change. This is one of the biggest changes since then because of the changes to the prescription drug program, the shortening of the risk corridors for Medicare Advantage carriers. We knew that there was going to be a lot of disruption this year, and like many of us in the room, we were concerned about really one primary thing was that change to Part D, and how is this going to impact cost? What are we going to do from a cost perspective? Are we going to have to rewrite our entire book of business because of costs and things like that? And getting access to this data and having the analytics ran behind it was kind of shocking. It was a little bit surprising to us that cost really wasn't the issue. Formulary changes became the biggest issue. That's where the most disruption was going to happen for our members outside of plan changes and plan sunsetting at the end of the year was the formulary changes. But being able to have that level of insight gave us an opportunity to go a step further with our agents instead of saying, hey, you need to be out there collecting information, you need to be setting up your AEP appointments now. Now we had a targeted list of data where we knew exactly who was going to be impacted and why they were going to be impacted, and we were able to provide that to our agents and agencies across the country. That just made our AEP way easier than it should have. I'd say this open-heartedly, like we had a cheat code for this past AEP. And it was really a revolution within our agents and our brokerage distribution just to have this access to the data and really focus on where those disruptions were.
So being that this was a big year of disruptions, do you have any, I know you don't have the crystal ball, but do you have any thoughts or insights into what we should continue to see this year?
I think we're at the, we've bought the ticket to the amusement park. We stood in line to get on the ride. We went through that first roller coaster, but we've got a couple more roller coasters to go. With all the things that's happening in the marketplace, with the Part D disruption and the increase in the carrier share of cost on their side, with the risks associated with the reimbursement rates being so low, but medical utilization going through the roof, we are going to continue to see disruptions in the marketplace on a pretty consistent basis for at least the next 3 annual enrollment periods, where carriers are trying to figure out the math on the back end. They're trying to figure out how these, the lower reimbursements are affecting their book of business. That we're only in March, and carriers really don't have a true understanding of what the impacts of the increased cost on their side for drugs is going to be. So as carriers over the next couple of years kind of get the data they need to make the decisions they need to keep their plans in the marketplace, to keep them commissionable, so that we have something to sell and offer to those clients, we're going to continue to see these disruptions throughout the next couple of AEPs as they kind of level out and balance and get used to really the new market that is the Medicare Advantage and Part D market with all the changes.
Well, and there's a looming sort of pressure on the market as well. In addition to all of the changes that are coming, all of the bobs and weaves that agents have to do every single year, let's all remember that by 2030, there's going to be 84 million Medicare eligible seniors in the United States. And the amount of agents to serve those 84 million seniors has stayed stagnant or has decreased every single year. So there is this mounting pressure, in addition to all of these, massive changes and curveballs that come our way, of just saying, look, we're all going to have to manage larger and larger books constantly. On Connecture, we see an average book size right now of about 250, but some of our power users are dealing with 1,000, 2,000, sometimes 5,000 members that all have, all members that have one agent of record. That's an insane amount of people, but it also represents a really exciting opportunity. The key word there is efficiency. Yes. And regardless of what the changes are every single year, there may be new things that we're not even aware of right now, but in June, July, August, we're all going to be very aware of and quite frankly panicked by it. There is a sense of real efficiency that needs to be gained in terms of disruptions that compound from year to year.
Yep.
Okay. So this question is for Chris, and thanks, Aaron. Can you talk about the impact on having greater transparency into a book of business for members, for agents, and for your organization?
I may not have a crystal ball when it comes to what's going to happen in this marketplace, but I think we got darn close. Having that level of data and being able to drill into the plans across the country, our agencies, our distribution throughout all 50 states, to look at what the changes were going to be in the disruptions and the impact, and being able to give that information to our partners was a game changer for this last annual enrollment period. I said it before, and I'll echo it again. A lot of agents were, as from or June when certification started through July, August, getting close to the start of the annual enrollment period, it was all about how am I going to meet with my entire book of business? How am I going to see 250? I had one agency in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They had to do 4,000 PDP reviews. Like, how are we going to go through all this information and reach out to these individuals? And having that level of data behind there where we could go to an agency and say, hey, out of your 250 clients, about 220 of them are going to be fine. Here's the 30 people that you absolutely need to reach out to because they're going to have the biggest impact this annual enrollment period. And being able to provide that information to them got rid of all of the stress and all of the worry that we were worried about for this very chaotic annual enrollment period, and gave them the ability to really focus on getting to the members that were going to be the most impacted. What was one of the things that also popped up, kind of reared its ugly head in the middle of this last annual election period? We had a national election, right? And we can look back historically through our business. Any election year, every 4 years, we go through and have a little bit of business before the election. We do a little bit of our business. Not a lot of people want to sit down and meet and things like that. Then we have the election, and then everything comes flooding in. From having access to this data, we were able to do 39% of our AEP production before the election. It was insane, the impact that this data had on our agency, and being able to get after those people, have those important meetings, and it really opened up a lot of the enrollment period for growth. We at JSA had one of our biggest growth years ever on record, and we've been doing AEP business since AEP became an acronym that we're all aware of. So it was amazing.
So we all know, agent behavior and needing all technology before and getting them trained. And, here you did introduce this new analytic platform to your agents right, at AEP. How did you get it into their hands, and how did you help them be successful with the tool?
Yep, so we were able to get some people into the tool itself. They had access to it. We were able to build even an agency look for a couple individuals so they could see all the downlines and everything that they needed to do. But we met a lot of our agents that were in the kind of the busyness of that pre-marketing of AEP, where they're still trying to set up their appointments, they're still trying to reach out to their members. And we gave them this information and said, hey, pump the brakes on what you're doing. This is the information and this is the impact that you really need to focus on. And a lot of them just wanted to just send us the information. So we sent them the spreadsheets, we sent them the communication that came along with it, and they took it and ran. We showed them what the data meant. We showed them exactly why and how we did the analytics. We showed them what was going to be important for them. And even providing that data to them and giving them a targeted list of things to do during AEP also made them kind of understand their market a little bit better on what carriers were going to be good, what carriers were to avoid for certain situations. So for the new business and the growth that they all experienced during AEP, that information, having access to that right there, was helping guide their decisions for the rest of the AEP.
And giving access directly to the agents and then at the manager level is really informing how we're shaping out the full platform this year, right? Because you can imagine in a pilot phase, it's more or less a data visualization, right? Still ways to sort of slice and dice, but we're making these really targeted improvements to make sure we're not flooding agents with information, right? Yep. Not everyone is a business intelligence nerd. I'm certainly not. I'm more of a product guy, and I want things that are really accessible for me. And so we're taking steps to make sure that is really the case. And just even to take a stab at a couple of the questions that we see, this is a launch year to make sure that we can put this into the hands of as many people as possible. And by hands as possible, we want to make sure we achieve a scale of membership, right? So for the pilot itself, we said, look, we got to pick a couple partners here to make sure that we can do this right. And so when we're coming into this year and giving access, both at the enterprise level and at the agent level, we're now sort of building off of a year of knowing that we can make this possible. But we're also coming off of a year of knowing that the data can be flexible enough to flex with the changes that are coming. So it's less stagnant into what we call audiences. Last year we had 4 audiences of people available. That was discontinuations, formulary, premium, and crosswalk. This year we're making 14 audiences of people available. So almost over 3x the amount of insight that we were able to deliver, and that's only gonna continue. But the fact that we can deliver it to an agent level, I love this story. I was sitting with a JSA agent. Her name was Lori. And she was looking at her view. She had about 230 members in her book. And she started to filter down to the data and got it down to a list of 4 people. These 4 people were going to have a specific drug formulary change for a specific drug. It was Enbrel. They all were going to have Enbrel drop off their formulary for next year. And the light bulb went off. Seeing a list of 4 people, she goes, all right, that's my morning. Those are the 4 people that I need to call right now. She almost wanted to jump out of the call before I was done explaining things. I was like, no, there's a couple buttons. She's like, yeah, whatever. Because there was a very targeted sense to this. It clicks in your mind of saying, look, we can talk about the massive scale of all of this data, but it comes down to which of your members are going to have a terrible time. Which ones are going to be so frustrated by the fact that their agent didn't let them know that there was a bomb about to go off? That's what we're aiming for. And the more we structure this, the more we get customers to come to us and use this and to collaborate with us. Access is only going to get wider, and it's going to be much more seamless the way that you can get this data delivered.
Any surprises to either one of you that you either weren't prepared for or that are driving what you think we could do better for the next iteration? Our
biggest surprise with the data was what was going to be the biggest issue. And it came down to formulary. I mean, everybody's nodding their head. Like, formulary was the biggest problem. We were all, going through end of July, August, or even later than that, because carriers were late to get their data out this year and their plan information out this year. We're at rollout meetings and they're showing us the plans, the benefits, and things like that. But did anybody recognize at that point carriers really weren't saying anything about their formulary? And that became the biggest disruptor. And I think that's going to continue to be a big disruptor too in the market, is because in order to balance their book of business, the health of their membership and things like that, they're going to go back to, I harken back to 2013, 2014, where carriers were doing what I call playing formulary games, where they were changing formularies. Hey, we really can't afford this membership anymore.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah, right. We need to change this drug to a higher tier. We need to remove it altogether. And I think that's going to continue as these carriers try and battle for the healthiest book of business, most profitable book of business to them. We're going to see big disruptions in those formularies. So that was one of the big things, because we were all worried about cost. And all of a sudden, boom, right in our face, cost was not an issue. It was what drugs are covered by what plan. That was the biggest surprise to us.
Okay.
I think the surprise for me is the role of the person where the data is most valuable. So the way that the system works, and I'll address this too. So the pilot that we were talking about was with two partners. This year, it's available for anyone to partner with us, collaborate with us, and engage on having access to active analytics. So this is our official launch statement. Come and chat with us, and let's talk about how we can make this data available to you. But what was really surprising was that sometimes it's really valuable to be down at the agent level, for the agent to have direct access to the data. But there are a lot of different roles within an organization that can become the champions for this insight, whether it's a member experience team, whether it's a distribution team, whether it's an IT team, whether it's a customer service team, a patient advocate team. There are a lot of different groups that, if they have access to this information, they can make the experience even more seamless for an agent to jump on a call and say, hey, I'm about to send you a list of 75 people. That should be your focus for the next couple days, right? To engage with these folks, because these are going to be the ones that are most affected. The rest of your book, the other 491, they don't have as high a level of impact. So, maybe that's your Thursday, Friday versus your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But here's the other cool thing. Whatever team champions forward this data, it comes down to the agent's ability to make use of every valuable minute during AEP. And how cool is it to be able to address all of the folks that are going to be the difficult conversations, do those very efficiently, very quickly, and very early in the process to free up the rest of your AEP to focus on new business opportunities. So the biggest surprise is just the type of individual that can steward and champion the data forward.
Yeah, and the feedback that we hear now that we're kind of out in the market and talking to our customers and other agencies and health plans is that a lot of our customers or our prospects, they have this data, but they don't do anything with it. So to have a partner that is help aggregating it and putting it in an actionable format is really a key, right? Data is only as good as what you do with it. So I think the way that we've developed this and made it easy for the agents to access it, and of course the end result is the consumers get a better plan and they get the attention that they need when they need it. Okay, so vision. Let's talk about what we envision unlocking for plan year 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first part of the vision for the data itself is to be as flexible as possible, to know that we can move and roll with the punches that are going to come our way. So yes, we're going to make an increased amount of insight available based on our pilot year, but we're fully expecting that by, again, June, July, August, there's going to be audiences of people that we don't know about yet. But we've built the infrastructure to respond to that. And looking even past this AEP into maybe the semi-mid future, it's everyone's favorite topic. Let's talk about artificial intelligence for a second. What I get really excited about is that if we play our cards right, if we work with the right customers, if we collaborate in the right ways, ConnectureDRX will essentially build the largest AI data training model in the Medicare industry, knowing exactly how members are going to be affected and allowing folks to really dig into their own data in a very natural, very comfortable way. So there's a lot that we can do to make sure that our data is accurate, to make sure it's delivered compliantly and securely. But there's a lot that we can do just based on the absolute massive scale of the data that we're playing with to allow folks to dig into it themselves and to make sure that that process of getting to the right list of people is a very natural natural experience, and we think that AI can be a big part of that.
One of the things that I'm looking forward to is, and Aaron said it already, is flexibility. So this past AEP, we kind of all had an expectation of exactly what this AEP was going to look like, the things that we were going to run into, the roadblocks that was going to present themselves. And then we got hit with things that have never happened in our industry before. Raise your hand if you were impacted by non-commissionable plans on November 1st. Exactly. So that was kind of something that came out of nowhere. How many of you guys dealt with some of the major health carriers in your market were having contract battles with some of the major healthcare providers in your market? Raise your hand. Exactly. So with the vision for this, and we've discussed this at great length, and we discussed at the Connecture conference this year, is being able to, anytime those surprises happen, not just during AEP, but anytime throughout the year, that Active Analytics will be able to give you the list of people that are going to be impacted by those decisions, and it's flexible. And what that'll do for the industry as a whole is it's going to relieve the stress of, we get AEP stress every single year. It's going to relieve some of that stress, because if any of those changes come up, instead of having a knee-jerk panic reaction to it, you go to your tool, you look at the audiences that are available to you, and you start getting to work on those members. It is going to make dealing with the changes and the chaos that is going to be AEP for the next few years, it is going to make it one of the easier parts of this annual enrollment period. And you guys will be ready and will have what you need to weather any storm when it comes to the Medicare market over the next few years.
I'll put out another statement in terms of crystal ball, right? We hear a lot, we even heard it in the plenary, right, of the pressure on whether or not agents are here to stay. My opinion on it is that they are absolutely here to stay, because there are certain things that technology cannot do. And the main one is have a conversation with a senior who is staring down the barrel of having their finances and their health disrupted. There is no amount of chatbots in the world that can replace a human-to-human interaction that allows for that member to feel confident, feel a level of trust, feel a level of relief. And so, yes, we're a technology vendor, but I don't think we're in the business of replacing agents at all, or of making them go away. We are in the business of making them more efficient, of making your day less about poring over spreadsheets at midnight, which my mother-in-law, who's an agent out of Green Bay, does all the time. Right? We are not in the business of having agents go away. We are in the business of making agents more efficient than they've ever been, and make sure that they are recognized as the superheroes that they are for being stewards of this messy yet interesting industry that we've all decided to be a part of. Right? Our vision for the future, beyond all the technology, is to listen to agents, is to listen to agencies, listen to our customers. What data is important? What data isn't important? What can we leave on the cutting room floor, and what needs to be right in folks' faces? That's a huge commitment of ours.
And the good news is, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
The good news is you don't have to be an actual Connecture customer using Plan Compare 1 to have access to Active Analytics. It is a separate platform. We pull in the data from any system, and we can absolutely work with you. That was a question that came in. So I do want to, I know we're about at time. I want to give a special thanks to Chris and working with us and being such a great partner.
Thank you. If I may, I'm going to sing their praises. We've been working with Connecture for a long time. When they rolled out their first multi-carrier quoting and enrollment platform, and we've been in the trenches together for a couple of years. And I appreciate the fact that they're open and willing to talk to the industry, us as agents and agencies, to figure out what our concerns are. Look within their company, figure out what their strengths, ask questions about things that they don't know, and then really come up with solutions that have a great impact. And I just thank you guys. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you, to work on this vision, to put something together. And I think that this is one of the moments in the history of this Medicare market that is going to revolutionize how we as agents and agencies do business moving forward. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
And a piece.
And I would also say Chris and Aaron have they've cleared their schedule, and they will be at their booths. The JSA booth is number 413.
Yep.
The Connecture booth is number 632. So for anyone who would like to have additional conversations, please.
Or a demo. Yeah,
Or a demo. We're here through the end of tomorrow, and we just one last question. The platform that we are talking about today is called Active Analytics. Plan Compare One is the shopping and quoting tool, quoting and shopping and enrollment tool that Connecture uses for agencies, brokers, health plans. That's our platform.
My last piece of advice is if you ever hear Chris say something interesting on stage, take him out to coffee. That's my advice.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You guys have lunch next. Enjoy, and I hope to talk to you guys out on the floor.
Appreciate it.